Hi, it's Rob Haynes, host of the Real Faith, Real World podcast. The following is a special installment of a two-part episode in celebration of WME's 50th anniversary. I hope you enjoy.
I'm Kim Reisman, Executive Director of World Methodist Evangelism. For 5 decades, WME has equipped and encouraged Christ followers to share their faith in the context of today's realities. In this anniversary year, I've been reflecting on those past 50 years, and it's clear that God has used some remarkable people to accomplish this work. As we look forward to the next 50 years, I believe it's important to remember how God has led us in the past in order to better prepare ourselves for where God will lead us in the future. To get at that, we've been sharing stories from some of the wonderful people who have been part of the WME journey. My father, Maxie Dunnam, is one of those people. Recently, I was able to sit down with him and reflect on all that has gone on. Stories are meaningful to me, and I hope that what we share here will be meaningful for you as well. I'm excited to be able to be here today with my father, Maxie Dunnam, who has been involved with World Methodist Evangelism for many, many years. And we're here just to have a conversation about those memories and about that work and all of the things that have gone on during the past 50 years of World Methodist Evangelism's history. This is our 50th anniversary, and it's a great time to be in ministry, and we have a wonderful history and exciting things to come. So I'm just grateful, Pop, that you agreed to talk and to reminisce with me about all the things that have happened with World Methodist Evangelism during the time that you've been involved. So,
well, Kim, I don't think we should talk so personally, but it's good to talk with my daughter, and it's good that you are involved in world evangelism, because world evangelism has been one of the dynamic ministries of the church in which I've been most interested. So this is a great opportunity.
Well, I'm excited because we've been reminiscing over this past year about the history, and the first world director of World Methodist Evangelism was Sir Alan Walker. And I know that you knew him and worked with him, and so why don't we just start there?
Yeah, in fact, that's a great place to start, because Sir Alan, and when we started, he wasn't Sir Alan, and I might talk about that in a moment. Alan Walker was one of the great ministers, nationally and internationally known, lead pastor of the Central Hall in his country in Australia, in
Sydney?
Yeah, Sydney, yeah. Australia. And he unique in so many ways, but the right person to launch world evangelism. And indeed, he did launch it because of his commitment to evangelism and his knowledge of and relationship with leaders in the different expressions of the Wesleyan movement. He just felt that as a community, a world community of Methodists, that we should do what he called go on mission.
Go on mission.
Yeah, he says we must go on mission. And by that, he was thinking particularly, naturally, of evangelism.
Right, right.
That was the kind of mission he was talking about going on. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, he had a broad understanding of evangelism, and I think that was one of the things that really made WME special from the very beginning, was the kind of the DNA of a holistic understanding of evangelism that he brought to the picture.
And the neat thing about world evangelism is it has stayed faithful to that original notion that was his. And you're right, his his entire ministry was holistic.
Yeah.
In fact, it interests me because of who I am that he was a pacifist.
Right.
He was an out and out pacifist, and naturally, being the leader of that mission in the center of that great city, Sydney, which the ministry itself there was holistic. I mean, ministering to all the needs of the people, and he spoke to that nation, to Australia, in a very powerful way. And it interested me when I came to really know him intimately, that anytime an issue that impacted people and impacted Australia, the press would go to Alan to get his response to it.
Right.
So he was constantly in the news. And that leads me to this reflection about him, because we began by saying Sir Alan. It interests me that the Queen, because Australia is a part of the Commonwealth.
Right.
The Queen, of course, knew of his ministry in Sydney, and that knowledge of who he was and how he influenced that nation led her to knight him. And it's actually, that's the way he came to have that title. He was actually knighted by the Queen of England.
That is so cool.
I did not know him well before he became Sir Alan. He became Sir Alan during the time that I got to know him.
Oh,
yes.
That's so cool.
It is cool.
Well, how then did you actually get involved with World Evangelism? How did that story start?
I was involved in ministry with the Upper Room and had become the world editor of the Upper Room. And the Upper Room was connected with what was then the Board of Evangelism.
Oh, okay.
And so there was an intimate connection with the Board of Evangelism of the Methodist Church, the then Methodist Church in this country.
Oh, right, okay.
And as a result of that, was in contact with Joe Hale, the head of the World Methodist Council.
Oh, right, okay. He was the General Secretary.
And
That's right.
He is the person, really, that invited me and encouraged me to get involved with the council.
I gotcha.
And I originally became involved with the council because of the international nature of my ministry with the Upper Room.
That makes sense. Well, and even to this day, World Methodist Evangelism is intimately tied to the work of the council. We're very much missionally connected. So that relationship continues.
Right.
Absolutely. So then Joe Hale brought you onto the council, but then how did that unfold into World Methodist Evangelism?
Well, at that time, and I'm not sure it still persists, at that time, the World Methodist Council had some standing committees.
Right.
And evangelism was one of the standing committees. And they made me a member of that committee, and then somewhere along the way elected me as chair. Yeah.
You probably were not at that meeting when they elected you to chair.
Probably not. And that committee of the council was related, of course, to the beginning of what we now call world evangelism.
Exactly. World Methodist Evangelism grew out of that standing committee.
Right.
And that standing committee actually still is in existence with the council, and they are very much an advisory kind of council to our work, our continued work. So the relationship is still very, very close, very close. But that committee is what became World Methodist Evangelism.
Exactly. And Sir Alan called the church to go on mission.
Right.
And so we did try to go on mission. But at that point of the game, it was a very limited kind of thing because he was still
That's right.
involved in his ministry in Sydney,
Right.
And was primarily going on mission himself. But it was a cooperative type setting because he would go only where he was invited.
Right.
And it was an international thing because he was being invited by churches in different countries to come and lead evangelism events.
Right.
And eventually, he retired from his ministry there at Central Hall and became the full-time director of World Evangelism. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I remember,
excuse me.
what I was going to say, I just remember engaging him at the first International Christian Youth Conference on Evangelism. That was one of a major thrust that he began. And I attended that, and you remember, you didn't even think I'd have enough nerve to go on that trip. But I did in 1980, and that was life-changing. And you could even see in that event the kind of the way he brought together the holistic nature of evangelism, because everything about that was sharing the gospel, but sharing it in the context of what was happening in the world. And I remember for the first time meeting people from South Africa and hearing Peter Story preach, and recognizing the way all of these things are so intertwined. You can't just separate evangelism out and think that you're going to just do a revival or something like that and not take into account all the rest. And that was there from the very, very beginning.
Yeah, and that was the first youth, international youth conference that was held by World Evangelism. And you were a part of that.
Yeah, I was. I know, isn't that amazing?
That's wonderful.
And we've been doing them ever since. We've done 10 of them now. And the next one's going to be in Sweden in 2022. So we're real excited. That tradition continues on.
Well, see, it was shortly after that that I became the chair of World Evangelism. And a year or two later, Sir Alan totally retired.
Yes, right,
and ceased being the director of World Evangelism.
Well, then that brings us to the next little bit of history. So you were already the chair of World Evangelism. So then you were intimately involved in bringing in the next world director in, Eddie Fox. So how did that work?
That was really a monumental task because we had no resources because the World Methodist Council does not fund these standing committees to do ministry like that.
Right, exactly.
So, and ours was the only standing committee of the council that was beginning to do full-time kind of ministry in the area that we were charged with thinking about. And so, naturally, when Sir Alan retired, we had to think about a full-time director of World Evangelism, which meant we had to think about money to pay that person.
Right.
And we also had to think about how would best be the structuring of World Evangelism.
Right.
We knew that for it to be a world movement, it had to be a person who was available to the world and had a sensitivity about the world. But we also knew we had to find the money to fund such a person because Sir Alan had not been full-time.
Right, that's right.
And the budget prior to that time was primarily for his travel and that sort of thing. But we knew we couldn't continue that way.
Right.
And this is another unique little story. We had a Baptist, an outstanding Baptist layperson who had begun to come to our church in Memphis where I was the pastor, and he was very, very interested in evangelism. Baptist supposed to be, you know.
That's true. That's true.
He was interested in evangelism, and I just told him the story. And I said, we need money to start this movement, which is going to be a world movement, and to select the person that's going to be the leader of that. And he, really, this outstanding Baptist layperson, gave a gift to World Evangelism to pay the salary of the director for 1 year.
For 1 year.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's great.
And
so
that's
from
the
the
kind
very
of
beginning, it was an ecumenical, even though it's an ecumenical movement in the sense of the Wesleyan family. Early on, we were ecumenical even broader than that. So that's kind of cool.
It is cool. It is cool, and it also is a witness to the fact that I believe, and it's verified over and over again, that when we act boldly and we have a vision that has integrity and wholeness, God is going to provide. And we've seen that happen over and over again.
We have.
And that has been witnessed to over and over again in the different ministries of world evangelism that have begun.
Well,
So anyway,
no, go ahead.
Eddie was then on the staff of the evangelism division of the board of evangelism of the then Methodist Church, and so naturally he was one of the persons we looked at, and it ended up that we chose him to be that person.
And he led from the late 80s, I think it was 1989 that he came on board and led all the way to 2014, 2015.
And probably would have been at that first youth conference that you attended.
He absolutely was. In fact, there was a wide variety of people there, and I believe he was there. Although I had known Eddie from the past because we overlapped because of the upper room, and he was at the board of discipleship.
He was on the right.
So I had known him, and I remember watching the movies. There was a movie made of that ICYC, and Eddie is in that video. So he was definitely there. He was definitely there.
Yeah.
So that takes us into the 80s. What kind of memories do you have beyond that? What are you most proud of? What were you most excited about in your work with World Evangelism?
Well, that was a particular time in history, really. I mean, it was a unique time in history in so many different ways. And one of the things that was happening was that all across the world, people were finding their freedom and were gaining their freedom.
Mostly because of the fall of the dissolution of the Soviet Union.
That's right.
Fall of the Berlin Wall.
And churches,
and
especially in the Soviet Union and the Soviet bloc, Eastern Europe, they had been, well, in some instances, like in China, totally underground. But in Eastern Europe and Russia, they were very limited in terms of their ministry. And one of the neat emotional as well as other kind of definition of experiences that moved me deeply was to see the church faithful despite the circumstances in which we labored. I remember the first time I went to China, Joe Hale had established this meeting for some of us to attend in China. And we met, it was really oppressive in China, and the church was underground. But we were able to meet with 4 couples.
Oh, wow.
One other person who traveled with me from the Board of Global Ministries, that person and I met with 4 couples, and it really was one of the most moving experiences I've had to see these people. One member of one of the couples, a man, had been in a re-education program, which really was imprisonment, but working, you know. And he shared his experience, but what was so amazing was that they were so moved by the fact that we were there.
Wow.
It was a big
event for them.
Yeah, event for them, because we were there to support them.
Right.
To give them inspiration. But you know how that you know how that happened.
Yeah.
But it's reverse.
Right, exactly.
We're the ones that are encouraged and inspired. But I remember vividly they wanted to sing.
Oh, wow.
But we had to sing quietly. We were in a hotel. Oh. We had to sing quietly. And the two hymns that they knew and wanted to sing was "What a Friend We Have in Jesus" and "Amazing Grace."
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of flavored, to some degree, a long period of time in my connection with World Evangelism, because flowing out of that, we were visiting in the Soviet Union, we were visiting in places like Estonia, and in
other places in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, and where freedom was coming. And I also remember an occasion when we were visiting in Estonia, and Eddie Fox and I were together on this visit, because that little church in Estonia had remained open, even though it was oppressed and to a marked degree controlled, but it had remained open all during the Soviet period. And we were in the home of Olaf Parnemans, who was then the head of the church there.
Right.
And you remember, well, you know Eddie, he's excitable.
Yes.
And you know your father.
He's excitable too.
I'm excitable. And we were sharing rather raucously and singing, and Olaf was
trying to keep
us down, trying to keep us quiet. And he pointed out the window of the parsonage where he lived, and walking in front of the parsonage were 2 soldiers, and they had been just being sure nothing
was going on
that they didn't want to be going on.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of seeing people emerge from oppression was just an exhilarating
experience.
Yeah.
I so enjoyed the conversation with Pop, and I hope you'll share this episode with others. You heard about the radical generosity that has supported WME over all these years, and we're grateful to Christ Church Memphis and their generosity that makes this podcast possible. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss our next episode, when Pop talks about our Connecting Congregation ministry and the impact it's made over all the years.